As you have most likely figured out by now, flying IFR requires close teamwork between you and ATC. So let's talk about the procedures you are expected to follow to make for smooth coordination with ATC. Some of these procedures involve things you can do in the cockpit to help make sure you stay in touch with ATC. As you know, radars and radios have a limited range, and so to make sure that ATC can see and communicate with you, they have set up a number of remote radar antennas and communication sites. These remote sites are located throughout an ATC's facilities area of responsibility, and they do a good job of covering most of the places where folks will be flying. The problem is, you often have to change frequencies when you fly from one area of responsibility, known as a sector, to another. Following good procedures will help make your transition to a new frequency go a lot smoother. When one controller passes you off to a new controller, he gives you a new frequency to talk to. He expects you to read that new frequency back. That read back gives a check on the accuracy of what you heard, plus saying the frequency out loud will help you fix it in your memory until you can write it down or set it in your radio. Unless ATC tells you otherwise, change to the new frequency as soon as possible. The new controller may be waiting to give you some important instructions or information. As you change frequencies, it's a good idea to leave the old frequency in the standby position so you can go back to it if you need to. If you don't have a standby position, it's a good idea to write down your frequencies as you get them. That way, if you don't get a response on the new frequency, you can switch back to the folks you were just talking to and ask them to help you out. Introduce yourself on the new frequency with your identification and altitude. Center, Cessna 359er Echo Sierra 7000 says it all. Sometimes when you get to the new frequency, nobody answers. There could be several reasons for this. The controller could be busy coordinating over a landline. You might not be within radio range of the new sector yet at your altitude. Or you could have accidentally tuned to the wrong frequency. If you don't get an answer right away, don't get excited about it. It happens all the time. Just wait a few minutes and call again. Meanwhile, you can listen to see if you hear other airplanes talking to the controller on the frequency. If so, you can ask one of the other airplanes to relay a message to the controller for you. If you don't hear either other airplanes or the controller, go back to your previous frequency and tell the controller that you can't hear anybody on that frequency. Whatever you do, don't make repeated and continuous calls on the frequency. It could be that you are blocking vital communications with other airplanes. Now, sometimes ATC knows in advance you will fly through an area with no radio coverage. In that case, they will tell you to make a frequency change at a specific time, altitude, or place. In the event that you can't raise ATC on either a new frequency or the one you were using before a switch, all is not lost. You can look on your en route charts. Each ATC sector has a frequency printed on the chart, so you can easily find the nearest frequency to use.
Cessna 359er Echo Sierra is in radar contact 1 mile north of the Independence Airport.
You already know the significance of the magic words radar contact. Among other things, they relieve you of the chore of making position reports when you fly over the reporting points marked on your charts. But you're still not completely off the hook. There are other reports that you are required to make, even if you are in radar contact. I like to use the mnemonic SAMHAP to help remember them all. So what is a SAMHAP? I guess you can think of it as a mishap caused by SAM. The S is for safety of flight items. You should report anything that you think has a bearing on the safety of flight, such as unforecast or severe weather conditions. The A stands for avionics. You should report any malfunction or loss of any navigational receiver or communication capability, such as any loss of ADF or VOR receivers, loss of any ILS component, including localizer, glide slope, or marker beacons, loss of DME if at or above flight level 240, or intermittent communication problems. ATC will work around your limitations, but you have to tell them about them. The M is for missed approach. Obviously, if you're bouncing back into the airspace instead of landing, ATC needs to know. Next comes the H for holding. You must report entering holding and leaving holding. A is for altitude. When you leave an assigned altitude, you owe ATC a report. As soon as you make that report, ATC can use that altitude for someone else. You also owe ATC a report if you change altitudes when you're on a VFR on-top clearance. P is for performance. ATC really needs to know what to expect from you in the way of performance so they can efficiently fit you into their flow. There are two aspects of performance that you need to report on. The first is your climb and descent rate. If you can't climb or descend at least 500 feet per minute, ATC needs to know because they're moving other people around on the assumption that you'll be out of the way in a certain amount of time. The second performance item you need to tell them about is any change in true airspeed of plus or minus 10 knots or 5%, whichever is greater. Again, that's so they can plan separation and traffic flow. So there you have it. Just remember SAMHAP, and you'll remember the reports you always have to make, whether you are in radar contact or not. Now, there are 3 reports that you only have to make if you're not in radar contact. You can think of these as the 3 C's. You already know about the first C. When you're not in radar contact, you have to report over compulsory reporting points. The next C is for a change in your estimate to the next reporting point by more than 3 minutes when you are not in radar contact. And finally, the last C is to report crossing the final approach fix inbound when you are not in radar contact. It's your way of saying, watch out guys, here I come, when they can't see you coming. If you remember that these 3 C's are for when ATC can't see you, you'll see that they are just common sense. One of the things ATC does best is help you when you need it, but they have to know when you need it, and that part is up to you. Anytime the safe outcome of the flight is in doubt, declare an emergency. If you declare an emergency, you'll get timely or immediate help, and you can deviate from any clearance or regulation to deal with the problem. It's possible ATC may ask you to write a report about it later if they've given you priority. It seems like pilots have a big aversion to paperwork, but don't let the possibility of making a report cheat you out of the quick assistance you'll need when your safety is in question. Besides, you most likely won't have to file a report. The FAA knows that it is just not good policy to punish people who ask for help when they really need it. What if you realize that you've used more fuel than you planned? You have just enough fuel to be legal IFR, but you can't afford any delays either. What do you do now? Well, here is something you can do that is short of declaring an emergency, but lets ATC know you can't afford any delays. Tell ATC you are at minimum fuel. That will let ATC know that you don't need priority handling yet, but if you encounter any undue delays, you could end up declaring an emergency. When this happens, ATC will normally get you right to the airport, but you have to let them know first. Knowing how to fulfill your end of the partnership with ATC will go a long way towards making your IFR flights go smoothly. So if you put these good procedures to use, you'll find that even though ATC may be from the government, they really are there to help.